Hello everyone, my name is Yuri and I'm going to talk about visual thinking today. So, what is visual thinking? How can we use that? And what kind of benefits can it present to our needs? The way I explain visual thinking is I start with drawing a person. It's probably you or me or anyone else. And I'm also talking that person today is exposed to a very complex information, doing their job, and that complex information is coming from different sources. For example, we might be in a meeting talking to our colleagues, or we might be in a conference listening to a talk. So we hear the information. Or we might be reading a book, a social blog post, or an article. So we read that information. And what's in common in that is that information is linear. It's a verbal information that is consistent of words, a sequence of words that we consume one by one, and then we process them and try to make sense out of it. What happens inside of our brain is a big mystery. There are different theories suggesting what's happening, but basically what happens when we hear or read the verbal sequential information is that our brain tries to interpret that and establish connections between the concepts that are being explained in that sequence of information. And one of the theories, which is called the proposition theory, suggests that our brain here, that's how I draw the brain, by the way. You can adopt the same method if you need a nice icon, easy to draw for a brain. So our brain gets that sequence of words, interprets that, and produces a mental diagram, a mental image, something that the theory calls the proposition. So what is a proposition? A proposition is a system consisted of concepts and relations between those concepts. And an interesting thing about these propositions is that they are both abstract and visual at the same time. So you could say that when we form an explanation of a certain situation or when we create a mental map of that situation or a piece of information, we both understand and can actually see that with our internal eye, what we're talking or thinking about. And now back to visual thinking. Visual thinking is a way of interacting with an information which we either hear or read or think about when we grab a pen and we try to help ourselves by drawing the visual representations of the information we're thinking about or we're hearing or we are reading about, and we help our brain by supporting the thinking process that is happening inside of our head. And we are supporting that by externalizing the thinking process and forming a sort of a mental map, but on a paper or on a digital device, in order to also see that as we draw it, to make the process happen faster and with less friction for ourselves. That's what I call visual thinking, and there are a lot of different methods and tools that support the process. And all in all, I love it because there are multiple benefits suggested by this method of thinking. So what are those benefits? let's talk about them. And the way I draw benefits as an icon, I use the gem or a diamond icon, just like that. So which are the benefits? First of all, it's much faster compared to us trying to fiddle with the thoughts that emerge in our head when we hear or read information. It's much faster because we actually help our brain to come up with the visual models. Yes, sometimes we might come up with our own model, but then we can see where the flaws are and again get to the conclusions and good decisions faster. So it's much faster and of course easier because you don't have to deal with that all on your own inside of your brain. Now you have an external support for that process. Also, it's a deeper connection with the information. Because when we hear or read a lot of complex and convoluted information, what happens is that we might get overwhelmed, so we might start skipping parts of the information and we might omit important details, and we do that because we don't want to be overwhelmed. But when you draw the supporting mental images, you help yourself reduce the stress of information overload, and you actually think deeper about the things you hear or read because you can concentrate on certain aspects, ensuring that you understand and follow. The third benefit of the method is that if now you have to explain that to someone else, or let's say you were using the method to just organize your thoughts in the first place, what happens next is that you often need to refer that information to someone else. And with this method, you are now equipped to do it much better as far as communicating this. So you actually communicate much better with the help of the tool. And then lastly, which is one of the most important benefits for me personally, is that you have so much more fun doing it this way. And since it's fun, I usually draw a smiley to support that fact. So that's it. That's what I mean when I'm talking about visual thinking. That's what it is for me, and that's why I think it's so beneficial. And I don't know why you wouldn't want to use the method for yourself. Thanks for listening.